Hey guys, another week and another family dinner. So let me show you guys how I made everything. I wanted to go for a very fall themed dinner, so let me know how I did. Of course, the first thing that we do is go to the shops and get all the ingredients. I didn't go until it was very late. I went at 8 p.m. and I didn't get home till it was very late, and I started at 10:30. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself, but let's get started. I fill up a pot with some water and set that on the stove to boil. I chop up some cauliflower into medium sizes, wash that and then lay that on a tray with some olive oil, salt, pepper and paprika. I'm going to be roasting the cauliflower in the oven instead of boiling it. I think it gives it another depth of flavor for the cauliflower cheese. Once I mix that all together, I put it in the oven and then I start grating some cheese, which took so long. My arms were going to fall off. I was so tired. And at that point, my water was boiled. So I put in the pasta and salted it. And I chopped up some onions really small. And then in a pan, I added some oil and my onions and some garlic as well. Cooked that down for a few minutes before I added some flour and some butter to get my roux started. Then I start using a whisk. I mix it all together and then add in my milk and my double cream. My pasta was also cooked, so I strained that and set it aside. I'm doubling my cheese sauce because I'm going to use half of the mac and cheese and half of the cauliflower cheese. I think it's the same thing. I season with some salt, pepper and paprika and then add in my cream cheese and then add in my cheese as well. Add it in bit by bit and mix it to make sure it's melted before you add in the next bit of cheese. Then I add half the sauce in the mac and cheese and the rest I add the cauliflower, mix it all together and I set both aside in some oven trays. We're going to bake those tomorrow, so I just cover and I leave it. Wipe down my surfaces and then we're going to blend up some digestives. This is for the pecan and caramel cheesecake. Do you guys say pecan or pecan? I've been thinking about that a lot. Into the digestives, I add some nutmeg and some cinnamon and then the butter. Push it down into the pan. I only bring it up halfway on the sides. Put that in the oven to bake and then I whisk together some simple cheesecake, which is double cream, cream cheese, icing sugar. This is a simple no-bake cheesecake. Set that aside and then I chop up some pecans. I chop them roughly. Some are big, some are small. Then I started toasting those. Once they're toasted, I add some more cinnamon and some nutmeg and then the caramel. Mix that all together and then I set that aside to cool down. Then I blend up some bread with some garlic and then I toast those with some olive oil. I'm going to top this on the mac and cheese tomorrow. Whilst that's toasting, I wash up some dishes and then when it's golden, I pull it off and set that aside. At that point, my crust and my caramel has cooled down, so I start layering it. I do some cheesecake filling and then some of the pecans and then another bit of cheesecake and the rest of it. I sprinkle on some cinnamon and some caramel as well and do this cute little design. Pop that in the fridge and that's ready for tomorrow. Anytime I host, you will see me doing my desserts the night before or first thing in the morning. I think it's just one of those things I like to get out of the way. I start chopping up some apples for some mini apple pies, put that in a pan with some butter, cinnamon and brown sugar and then mix that all together and I set that aside to cool down as well. Whilst that's cooling down, I wash some more dishes and then I cut up some puff pastry. I started out really optimistic and made these cute designs, but this was so time consuming and it was so late, so I went to this simple design. So we had a mixture of both patterns. I set that aside and that's ready for tomorrow and then I start working on my chicken marinade. Always marinade in a bowl, taste it, adjust the salt, the seasoning and then put it on your chicken. I told the butchers to take out the spine but they didn't. It was so disgusting and I had to do it. I wash the chickens with some lemons and then I marinate it, put it on a tray with some carrots and onions at the bottom. Cover that and it's ready for tomorrow. And then I marinate my lamb, use my favorite steak seasoning, paprika, oil, mix that all together, set aside and then I wipe down the surfaces again. It was 1:40, so I went to sleep and I woke up the next morning at 10. I always start the mornings by doing some prep work. I get my trays, I prep everything. I cut up some onions into rings, pull the pomegranates and then I also make a chili sauce. A chili sauce was not really needed in my opinion, but my family will not have anything without chili sauce. So I just made it a very herby sauce. Added a bunch of coriander and blended that and then put it into my reusable yogurt pot. I feel like an auntie when I reuse ice cream pots and yogurt pots, but I set that aside and then I wash some potatoes. I cut half of these into chunks for some roast potatoes and half are peeled for the mashed potatoes. I also don't boil these now. I'm going to use them later, so I put them in some bowls and I set aside. Then I also make some garlic and herb infused cream. This is going to be for the mashed potatoes later, so I mix that all together and then I set that aside to cool down. And then in another pot, I mix together some milk and flour, whisk that all together until it comes to about 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Put that in a bowl with the rest of my dough ingredients, and this is for the milk buns, which was my favorite thing of the night. put on my bread attachment and start kneading that, and then I washed some more dishes and also put some dishes away. At that point my dough was looking so fluffy, and I also burnt myself. Then I start cooking my lamb. I cook it for about 2 minutes on each side until it's a bit browned. Then I add in some garlic, shallots, onions, chilies, thyme, rosemary, butter, and some peppercorns and a cinnamon stick. Then I add in my beef broth and some browning as well, and then cover that. I cook that on high heat for about 40 minutes and then set it on low heat. I also put my chicken in the oven covered, and then I decided to work on my salad. It's another one of those things I like to get out of the way as well. I lay down some mixed leaf salad and then add some carrot ribbons, red onions, apples. I like to put my red onions in a bowl of cold water to get rid of that sharp bite. I also add on some pomegranate and toast some seeds. Whilst my seeds are toasting, I prepare my dressing, which was just mustard, olive oil, lemon, salt, and then some red pepper flakes. I wish I had Dijon mustard for this. It tastes so much better. And then I started boiling all my potatoes, and whilst it was boiling, I prepped my vegetables, cut off the ends for the asparagus and the broccoli, and then cut the carrots in half. I get the onion rings that I prepped this morning, put them on a tray, top with some olive oil, salt and pepper, and then lay on some puff pastry. You have to pat these down really well so the puff pastry and the onions stick together and it doesn't separate in the oven. Put that in the oven, and then my dough had doubled in size, so I divide it into about 10 equal pieces. Roll it out, fold in the sides, roll that out again, and then just roll it like you see me doing. Shape this into a bowl and then put it on a tray, cover it, and let it double again. I check on my meat and it was cooked, so I added in my slurry to thicken up the sauce. Then I checked on my chicken and pulled it out of the oven, and this was my first time injecting the juices back into the chicken, and I kind of liked it. I also add some marinade to some bits of the chicken and then put that back in the oven uncovered. Check on my meat and it was looking so good, and the kitchen smelled really, really nice. I wrapped up some garlic with some olive oil and some parchment paper and put that in the oven, and then I flipped over the puff pastries, topped it with some bacon and then some mozzarella as well, and put that back in the oven. Also, at this point, my potatoes are all boiled, so I strain them and then let them dry out a little bit. I pull out my puff pastries again, topped with some coriander and some chili flakes. These were so simple and they turned out so good. I loved it so much, and they were also really pretty. I checked on my chicken and that was also done, so I set that aside. For my roast potatoes, I put the potatoes on a pan with some hot oil and seasoned with salt and pepper and put that in the oven. My mashed potatoes, I whisked it all together, added some butter and that cream that we infused this morning, salt and pepper, and it turned out so nice. I tasted it with some of the meat and I loved it. I also loved the color on the meat. It was looking so nice. I burnt myself again, so I needed to sit for a minute, but that didn't last very long because I had to get back in the kitchen and make my roux for my gravy. Whisked that all together until it thickened, and then I set that aside in my gravy boat and went back to washing up. Also, my milk buns had doubled, so I topped it with some milk and put that in the oven, and my potatoes came out super crispy. Cut up some chives with some scissors, of course. Who's still using a knife to chop these up? Then I plated up my chicken with the carrots and the onions, and it looks so nice. These potatoes turned out so crispy, and they were so fluffy in the inside. I love them so much. And then I topped it with the garlic and then also some herbs on top. They were just so good. I set that aside, and then in a pan added some olive oil, shallots and some garlic, and then added in the broccolini. Cooked those for a few minutes and then steamed it the rest of the way. Set that aside, and then for my carrots, once they were cooked, I added some honey and some harissa. I also put my mac and cheese and cauliflower in the oven. I cooked it for about 15 minutes and then 5 minutes to grill the top. For my cauliflower, I topped it with some chives and chili flakes, and then for my mac and cheese, I added the breadcrumbs and some more chives. The milk buns also came out so good, and so did the vegetables. The milk buns were definitely the star of the night. These alongside the lamb were the top two of the night. It was so fluffy. Honestly, I need to give you guys the recipe for this. You're gonna love it. For the mashed potatoes, I topped it with some butter and some chives, and this was the full spread. I have the pastries, the vegetables, the milk buns, cauliflower cheese, mac and cheese with the crispy garlic topping, the braised lamb, gravy, roast potatoes, and roast chicken as well. Everything turned out so good. I was really proud of myself. Let me know what you guys think about the spread, what you would add, what you would do differently. I honestly love that I switched it up for this week's dinner, and then I forgot about my salad, so I have to show you guys. It turned out so pretty. And went back to the buns. I literally keep showing off about this bread. And then my sister came and she bought some fried chicken, which was so good. And then I added the chili in some bowls, and then this was the spread. The cauliflower cheese turned out so nice, and look at this plate. Obviously we have some salad there, so the whole plate is really healthy. This plate was enough to send you into a food coma. And look at the lamb, it was just melting away. I was so proud of myself. Once everyone had eaten and we cleaned up, I went back in the kitchen and put the apple pies in the oven, and then I took out the cheesecake. We had the apple pies with some custard, my sister made some cake, and my mum made some anu barawa, and I loved it so much. And then finished the night with some green tea, of course, and it was just so good. Let me know what you guys think of the spread, and stay tuned for next time.